Hi everyone, my name is Lindsay McCrae. I'm a communications officer at the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. And today I'm going to be talking to you about how to amplify your research using social media. So I'm going to be talking to you about some best practices to create great content that will help increase the reach of your research and hopefully the impact as well. So let's get started. The goal of this knowledge mobilization segment is to help you move beyond your communications plan to create engaging social media content that makes your research visible to larger audiences. I want to help you move from this to this. So I'm going to talk to you about why social media matters for research, what to post, where to post, when to post, and I'll give you some of the tools you'll need to make this happen for your own research, right? Which is the point of all of this. At the end, I'll also be doing a tutorial on how to create your own infographics and other images to help your social media and research stand out. So essentially, I'll help you kind of create something like this. But before we dive in, I want to really just stress the importance of social media for research, right? Because I think it's something that a lot of people see as kind of a nice to have, not need to have. And while that sort of may be true, this quote I think really illustrates that social media is part of the research process. It should be a part of the research process, the dissemination part, right? The knowledge mobilization part. I know that at the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness, our social media is a huge component of our knowledge mobilization and a huge component of our dissemination piece. Twitter especially has been one of our most powerful tools for reaching the masses. And so I'm going to talk to you about how you can kind of leverage some best practices to get started with social media and promoting your own research on it. So specific reasons to share research on social media. I think it's important to again say that social media is one of the most prominent and efficient ways of sharing information in today's age. It can help you reach large audiences quickly. It can help you to avoid the dusty shelf syndrome, which is something that at my organization we laugh a lot about, but it's this idea that, let's say you publish your article to an academic journal that sits behind a paywall. It's really only accessible to a handful of people, right? But what if your research is something that you want policymakers to see, you want politicians to see, you want service providers to see? How are they going to do that when it's sitting behind a paywall, right? And so the dusty shelf syndrome is this idea that once the kind of small handful of academics who have access to paid academic journals, it kind of goes back up on a virtual shelf and it sits there for the rest of its life collecting dust, not really being used by the people who need to use it the most or who could benefit from it the most. So social media helps to avoid that. It also helps to control the narrative around your research, right? So when you post your research to an academic journal, you get to write your little abstract or, a synopsis, but you don't really get to say anything else. Whereas with social media, you have many opportunities to kind of drive the direction of the conversation around your research. And it also helps you make connections with stakeholders. So maybe you really want a particular policymaker to know about, a very specific statistic or finding that you uncovered in your research. You can actually write that statistic out on social media, pair it with a really stunning image, and tag that policymaker. Let's say that, lucky for you, they have Twitter. You tag them in it. And that increases the chance that they're going to see your content, read your content, maybe react to your content, and use your content in the way that you intend for them to. So what should you post? So before you post, I always say, go back to your communications plan where you asked yourself a bunch of questions about what your goals are. What do you want to share? What does your audience need to know? What questions will they have? How do you want people to use your research, and what are they going to need to be able to use it in that way? Social media is one of those tools that you can use to kind of really give people the tools that they need, right? So, maybe you release a report and you say explicitly, hey, this findings from this report can be used by service providers, by policymakers to create better programming and to create better funding streams for X population. So I definitely say before you start writing any content, go back to your communications plan, ask yourself these questions, and continue to ask yourself these questions throughout your process of writing social media. What type of content should you post? Well, of course, key findings from your report, infographics from your report. So if you were lucky enough to have a design team maybe work on your report, or maybe you created your own infographics, those are excellent, excellent content for social media. Voices from your research. So maybe there were a number of people whose stories were reflected in your research, so pull some quotes from some of those people and pop them on social media. It's a great, great way to kind of share and highlight different perspectives and maybe highlight some voices that don't usually get heard. Videos of live events. So maybe you had a live kind of launch event for your research and there's a video from it. Pop that on social media. Maybe you gave a lecture or spoke at a conference or gave a speech related to your research. That's great for social media. Updates on your research. So, maybe you're, 1 month away, or maybe you're a week away. You can kind of post an update about that on social media to kind of create some anticipation for when your research does come out. So there are 3 different types of content. Relevant content, which is valuable, interesting, entertaining content. And entertaining to who? Interesting to who? Of course, your audience. That's kind of the most important stakeholder in your social media is your audience. So you always want to be posting something that's going to be interesting to them, not just interesting to you. Reshared content, so that's content not created by you, but created by other people in the industry. And promotional content, so that's content that's specific to your own research and you've written that research, or you've written that content yourself, sorry. Now, why these 3 content categories are important is because you want to kind of rotate fairly evenly across these 3 different types of content categories. Why? Because you don't want to be one of those people that's just shamelessly plugging and promoting your own content day after day after day after day, right? Social media, like a regular conversation in person with someone, is reciprocal. It's give and it's take. So you want to be sharing valuable, interesting, entertaining resources for people that are not only focused on your research, right? But just generally things that might be helpful to people kind of in your sector, in your field. You also want to be sharing content from other people. When you share someone's content, they become more likely to share your content, right? It's a reciprocal relationship. And that's one of the ways that you build community and help build your following on social media. And then, of course, promotional content. I mean, that's the real reason why you're there. So you've got to have that, but it has to be a nice, even balance. So here are some rules to live by when you're trying to write good content. Rule number 1, keep it short and simple. Like with many things in life, you want to keep it short, you want to keep it simple. People are being bombarded with a million pieces of information in their day. You don't want to make it hard for them to understand what you're trying to say. So share one idea at a time. So one statistic at a time. One statistic and sort of, one piece of insight or one of your kind of thoughts around that data. That's the kind of content that you're looking to write. And definitely avoid using industry jargon. So you want to keep your terms as simple and as easy to read as possible so that even if someone's not in your industry, but they're interested in the topic, they'll understand what you're saying. Rule number 2, always use a hashtag. Hashtags are the way that people search for and kind of organize and sift through content on social media. So you want to be using a hashtag every time you post something so that your information becomes searchable to other people, right? If you want your content to be part of kind of the larger conversation on social media around your research topic, then you've got to use a hashtag. Popular hashtags tend to be sort of like key terms. So think about the kind of terms that people would type into Google if they wanted to learn something about your topic, right? Those are the kinds of hashtags that you want to use. It's definitely helpful to kind of do a little bit of research to see what kind of hashtags are already popular for your topic, and kind of jump on board with those hashtags so that your content becomes a part of that conversation versus, trying to come up with your own kind of creative, fun, funky hashtag. You really just want to keep simple and basic in mind when you're trying to figure out what hashtags to use, and don't use more than one or two. So data actually says that the more hashtags you use, the less engagement you tend to have on social media. So if you've ever seen those social media posts with like 50 hashtags, definitely don't do that. Keep it focused, keep it simple, keep it to one or two. Rule number 3, tag people strategically. So let's say that you want a policymaker to see your content. You really want them to change policy on a particular issue related to your research. You maybe write a piece of a fact or a statistic from your research that you think really illustrates why this particular change needs to be made, and you tag that policymaker on social media. So on Twitter, for example, when you're live tweeting, you can post a picture. So you write your piece of content, you post a picture, or you attach a picture to it, and you can tag the picture. So you can tag that policymaker in your picture, and then they'll get a notification that they've been tagged in something. So if they're a policymaker that happens to run their own Twitter account, it really increases the chances that they'll see your content, that they'll read your content, and that they might engage with it, and they might actually take up your recommendations. So that's a really good one. Rule number 4, always shorten your hyperlinks. So when you're sharing your research, I always say it's a really good idea to kind of give people kind of a key fact from your research, but then link to a place where they can read the full research on another platform. Now, because with social media, you really want to keep things short and simple, and on Twitter, you're forced to. You only have 242 characters. Every letter counts. So link shorteners take those super, super long hyperlinks and they make them 23 characters. So it's really helpful when you're trying to be conscious of character limits to use a link shortener. It also makes your content easier to read. And when content is easier to read, people are more interested, people are more likely to reshare it. So it's a win-win-win-win-win situation. Rule number 5, always include an image or infographic. Now, I know that that sounds like a very cumbersome thing, and I'll be honest with you, it definitely does take a little bit of extra time, but it's so, so, so worth it. All of the data, especially in 2020, says that posts with videos or images, some sort of media attached to them, do better. They get more likes, they get more shares, they get more comments and engagements. So if your goal is to just have your research be seen by as many people as possible, and to gain some support for your research through the online community, and taking a little bit of time to create find a thoughtful image to go with your content is really important. Now, I will say it's important to be careful about which images you use. A lot of images on the internet are owned by other people or have copyright issues, or require you to attribute the person who took the photo or who created the image. And so I don't recommend just doing a Google search. There are a lot of great databases that offer free sort of stock photo images, and some of them are better than others. I really recommend that you go to one of those kind of stock photo websites. Unsplash is my favorite. It kind of steers away from those cheesy stock photos and has some really beautiful kind of artistic almost photos that are great to use. And pull one of those images, and if you're kind of short on time, just copy and save that image and just pop it with your piece of content. But make sure it's relevant, right? So if you're, let's say, researching about homelessness, make sure that your image is related to homelessness, and make sure it's the right size. So I don't know if you've ever seen someone post a photo on Instagram or on Twitter, and half of someone's head's cut off, or they posted a quote and you can't see half the quote because it's cut off. Posting an image like that that's not the right size is, I think, worse than posting no image at all, right? So if you don't have time to size it properly and it's getting cut off, then just scrap the image altogether. You really want to aim for quality here. And if you've got a little bit of time, I definitely recommend creating your own infographic or creating your own sort of pared down version of an infographic. And I'm actually going to give you a quick tutorial at the end of this presentation so that you can do it yourself. And the platform that I use to do it is free. So stay tuned for that at the end. So where should you post? So there's lots of different places that you can post. There's tons of different social media platforms, and no, you don't need to be on all of them. No, you don't necessarily need to be on TikTok. I know for us, we have chosen not to do TikTok. We focus on 4: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Twitter is my personal favorite, and it's definitely where I focus the majority of my time as a social media coordinator for the COH. But with that, you need to keep in mind that each platform sort of has a slightly different, I wouldn't say purpose, but there's different styles of writing that are appropriate for each platform. And it's really important that you're aware of that before you get started. So Twitter is good for kind of soundbite content, kind of like elevator pitch, really short, concise, small pieces of information. Facebook is good if you want to kind of expand a little bit more and give a little bit more context to your content. Videos tend to do really well on Facebook as well. Instagram, as we all know, is image kind of photo-driven content, so it's not a great place to post links to your research, but let's say you have a really beautiful infographic. Pop that on Instagram. Let's say that you've created a really nice image that clearly displays some kind of new data from your research. That can go on Instagram. And LinkedIn is good for longer form posts. So let's say you kind of want to write almost like a blog style piece, maybe not as long as a blog, but just kind of a longer form piece where you're really fleshing out kind of some of your ideas around your research. LinkedIn is a great place for that. The algorithms for LinkedIn really prioritize quality content that gets high levels of kind of comments and engagement back and forth. So if that's the kind of interaction you're looking to have and you have time for that, then LinkedIn is great. When should you post? So here's a list of kind of all of the days and the times that are the best to post for each of these platforms. I won't read them all, but kind of as a general statement, lunchtime tends to be pretty popular kind of across all the platforms. It's when people are taking a break from work, and usually they kind of take out their phones and they check in on what they've missed in the world and online during the morning while they were at work. Also, a popular time tends to be right after work. So people have kind of locked or clocked out from their job for the day. And again, like they were doing at lunch, they're wanting to check in on all of the events that they've missed throughout the day. So this information is really good to keep in mind if you're really, really trying to get maximum engagement. Let's say you're launching your new research, right? You want to pick a launch date that's really going to get good returns for you. So do not launch research on a Saturday or a Sunday. I mean, of course you can, but it's really going to impact the uptake. It's really going to impact how many people see your content and engage with your content. So you're much better off to wait for Monday or at some point during the week. So how do you know if your content is working for you? Well, you got to measure your performance. Most of these platforms, actually all of these platforms, have built-in analytic features, meaning you can click on this feature, they're free, and it will tell you how many people have liked X post, how many people have retweeted, Y post. And this information is useful if you have specific kind of engagement targets. But let's say that you don't. It's helpful for you to kind of track maybe patterns and trends around what content is really popular, right? So what content do you write that does really well? And what content do you write that maybe doesn't do so well? That's helpful for kind of adjusting your strategy. If you find that like every time you post a piece of content with this hashtag, people love it. And anytime you post content with that hashtag, people don't like it, then that says quite a bit. And it will help you to sort of reformulate your strategy. And definitely repeat this process. So I know that I check the analytics for the COH social media monthly. And then I track over, the course of 12 months to see if there's any trends. So for example, is our hashtag youth homelessness, doing well comparatively to, let's say, Indigenous homelessness. So it's important information to kind of be aware of. So some lessons from the ground. Definitely all of this is always an experiment, right? Social media changes so fast, right? The algorithms are constantly changing. And so by the time you think you've got it figured out, they'll change the algorithm and now you've got to work, towards it all over again. But I mean, if you're just going to kind of use it in a sort of casual way just to promote your research, it's definitely worth it. You just need to be flexible. You need to be patient. Building, a community or building a following takes some time. At the COH, we have over 18,000 followers, but, not that long ago, we were starting from scratch. Not during my time at the organization, but it really wasn't that long ago. And so it can feel like a really slow, kind of painful slog in the beginning. But if you just stick to it and remember the reason why you're doing it, right? It's because you want your research to be seen by the world and you want it to make an impact. And social media is such a great way to help you achieve that goal. So I talked about wanting to give you some sort of tools to help you along this sort of social media journey. So I talked a bit about creating your own images. So Canva is an incredible platform. It's been an absolute game changer for me. I cannot recommend it more. It's a free platform that allows you to create your own images and infographics. I also talked about using stock images that are, again, free. Unsplash is my favorite. Shortening links. I do it for every single piece of content every single day. It is really helpful, especially on Twitter where you're short for, character space. So Bitly is my go-to for that. Again, free. And pre-scheduling content. I didn't talk about this, but this is good for people who have a lot of content that they want to publish, but they don't want to have to, log on to Twitter or log on to Instagram or log on to Facebook every day to post this content. So Hootsuite is a pre-scheduling social media manager. So what it allows you to do with the free version is you can schedule up to 30 pieces of content ahead of time. So you can schedule write the piece of text, you can attach an image to it and schedule it for, next Thursday at 2 p.m. and it will just run automatically on its own. So for example, we don't work on the weekends, but we still post content on the weekends. And so I just schedule my content for Saturday and Sunday and it just goes automatically and I don't have to worry about it. So it's a really great tool. So that's it for this part of the presentation. I'm going to now transfer into a tutorial of Canva. So if you're interested in learning how to create your own images or create your own infographics around your research, which it's an incredible skill to have, and it really brings your research to life, I'm going to do a little tutorial next. So stick with me. Okay, so now I'm going to walk you through a tutorial on how to create infographics and social media images. Now remember that in the previous part of this presentation, I talked to you about the importance of pairing your social media content with really eye-catching visuals. People are much more likely to read, share, retweet your content if it's paired with an image that is hard for them to miss. Otherwise, your text-based social media content will get lost in the shuffle and lost in the noise. So taking a little bit of time to learn the skills to create your own infographics will really pay off for you in the long run and help your content reach the sort of big audiences that you're hoping to reach. And interestingly enough, we conducted a survey of the homelessness sector, and they mentioned that their favorite way to receive information, especially in kind of this COVID pandemic time, is through infographics. It's faster and easier for them to process the information that they need quickly. And so I'm going to help you figure out how to do that step by step. Okay, so here I am on my favorite graphic design platform. It's called Canva, and that's canva.com. It's super simple and easy to create your own account. It takes a few minutes, and it's a free graphic design platform that requires basically zero graphic design experience, which is perfect for our purposes. As you can see, as I scroll down here, it has a number of social media ready templates for graphics that you can use to promote your research. But for our purposes today, we're going to look for infographics. So what you do is you go to create a design. And if you know that you want to create an infographic, you click on infographic here. So it will already size it out for you. Now, the most fun part is that on the left-hand side here, it lists all the infographic templates that are available to you, and it even organizes them by categories. So if you're looking for a timeline infographic, you can see all in here. A charity infographic, you can see in there. So there's lots of opportunities for you. So I'm going to just give you an example here of how you can customize templates that they've already made available for you. So let's say you like the overall look and feel of this, but you don't like the color blue. You want to change this to, let's say, orange. So you click on the element that you want to change the color. You go over here to the color section and you change it to orange. You can also customize the color this way. But I'm going to go back to the original orange. I want this bottom to match, so orange. Now let's say that I don't like the font. So I click the font, I highlight it, and I can change the font in here. And as you can see, sort of all of your regular modifications that you're used to seeing with something like a Word document are listed all up in here. So you can change the alignment, you can underline, you can change the color of the font. So let's say you want that to be blue as well. So lots of opportunities to customize there. Now, you can't actually read this, so it's better for me to go back to the light here. Now, let's say that you don't like these individual icons. Maybe you've got icons already pre-selected. Maybe they were from the report that you published itself. Up here in the left-hand side, there is an opportunity to access a number of additional features. One of those includes being able to upload your own photo or image. So I don't have any on hand right now, but let's say I want to use this image instead of this light bulb here. So I click the light bulb, I delete, and then I take my image. I can resize it however I'd like. I can also drag it into place, very easy to do, and resize it. And now my image is being used instead. So really simple and easy there. It also has a whole archive of stock images that you can select from. One thing I recommend when you're using stock images is not to use stock images that show a person's face. The reason being, especially if you're in the social services sector, is that you don't want to accidentally suggest to your audience that, for example, people experiencing homelessness only look one way. So using images that don't feature people's faces is a great way to work around that. So this image that I've got here would be fairly appropriate since you can't actually see the person's face. And if I wanted to use this image, I can sort of put this in place. I can change the sizing and kind of work with it until it fits the dimensions. There are also a number of elements. So let's say that you don't have your own icons. Let's say you want to, you don't want this image, but you want to use this little person icon. You click on that. And again, you can drag it into place. You can add text, your own text if you want to add. So you just click on that. There are a number of templates here as well for text. You can also change the background. So, if you don't want a solid color background, there are a number of backgrounds for you to choose from. And you can also access some videos. But let's say that you don't like any of the templates that were available to you and you want to create your own. How do you do that? So you go into the main page, so the home page, you click on create a design. And again, you can Put in your own custom dimensions if you know them. It's important to customize your image to the size that's appropriate for the platform to avoid your image being cropped in a way that prevents people from seeing all the information that you want them to see on the image. But let's say you know it's going to be a Twitter post, you click there, it will already preset the dimensions for you. So I'm going to show you how to create an infographic like this. So let's say that the message you want people to know from your research is that the eviction prevention program that you evaluated or researched was successful because 90% of all program participants were stably housed after completing the program. So how do we do this? So we go back to our blank image here. Now we want to use a blue background. We'll use this background here. We want to add text. So we go here. We add our text. So the eviction prevention program was successful. And we want that to be in the corner. So we can resize it like this. And then we want it to be left aligned. So we go up here and we want it to be pretty big so people can clearly see your message. We want it to be a little bit more visually pleasing. So I personally think that the white text looks a little bit better than black. And I think I don't like that font, so I'm going to change it to, there's a number of them that I can pick, but I personally like this Leek Spartan one here. Now, I want to demonstrate to people that 90% of all of our participants were stably housed. So I go into elements here, and remember this is where we'll find a bunch of kind of images and little icons and graphics that they've created for us. Now I want to demonstrate 90%. So I'm going to search to see if there's already an image created for that. And well, what do you know? There is one. Now this would be the same if I wanted to choose 75. There's 75 right there. So a lot of the times the elements that you're looking for are already created for you, which is why this platform is so wonderful. So remember, I click, I drag onto my screen here. Now, I don't like the colors, let's say. So I click on it, and up here it tells me that there's the ability for me to customize the colors. So I'm a fan of blue and orange. So I'm going to change that black to, no, I'm going to change it to a dark color like that. And I'm going to leave as is. Now, I need to give people a little bit more context. I can't just say 90%, so I'm going to copy this text here. And the reason that I'm doing that instead of going over into the text bar here and choosing a text from there is because I want to just use the exact same font, the exact same color. I want all of the choices that I made about this font here, I want to use them again. So it's easier to just go into the copy. It's actually called duplicate, that feature. And then I can resize them, but I can basically change the text here without having to go through that whole process of selecting all the features again. So of the 97 participants in the program, 90% were stably housed. That's the context. Now, yeah, I'm going to play around with this a bit. I want this to be bigger because this is kind of the key piece of information here. And this is the context. I'm going to make this a little bit smaller and do it like this. I want it to be center aligned. Move that up a bit. Now I want to highlight to people that there were 97 participants, and I want to highlight again that there were 90% who were stably housed. So I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to change the color so that it stands out a little bit more. And I think that blue, oh, nope, see, that blue wasn't a good choice. It's really hard to read, and that's okay. Sometimes it's trial and error. You got to play a little bit with stuff. I'm going to use this orange. And oh, how did I do it on this one? Oh, I had a totally different color on the other one. That's okay. Sometimes you have to play around with stuff a bit. So I'm going to change the color a bit. And I'm going to change this. And I'm going to make it like this. And I'm going to change this back to that blue because I think that that's probably a little bit easier to see. And I still don't really love this. So I'm going to change, yeah, I'm going to customize it like that. That's much easier to read. Okay, so as you can see, it took me a little bit of playing around, but really simple once you understand the basics of how I put all of this stuff together. This chart, which is the kind of infographic part of it, was already created for us in Canva. And so all we had to do is just plug in the key pieces of information. So, what the key message was, and that's over here, give them a little bit of context, and then we play around with the colors. And there's probably, you may be looking at this and saying, there's ways that we could have made this even more interesting. So there's lots of ways to customize, but I just wanted to show you how simple and easy it is to create your own infographic. I hope this was helpful.